The night was cold and heavy with silence when she opened her eyes. For a long moment, she didn't even know if she was alive or caught in some endless dream. Concrete pillars rose around her, broken beams and rusted metal forming the skeleton of an unfinished building. The floor beneath her was cracked and covered in dust. She tried to move, but pain shot through her body, sharp and merciless. Her head throbbed, and when she lifted her hand to her temple, she found dried blood there. Panic rose like a tide. Who was she? She searched her mind for a name, for a memory, for something that would tell her who she was, but nothing came. Her mind was a blank wall. She was no one. The darkness pressed closer, and with it came sounds. It's not footsteps, not voices' soft paws against broken concrete. She froze. From the shadows, glowing eyes appeared, one pair, then another, then more, until she was surrounded by them. Her heart hammered, fear gripping her chest. But then the shapes stepped forward. Dogs, stray dogs, lean and scarred by the streets, their ribs showing through thin fur. They circled her slowly, cautious, sniffing, growling low in their throats. She expected teeth, an attack, the end of whatever broken life she had left, but instead one of them. A large black dog with torn ears stepped forward and nudged her hand. His eyes were sharp, yet calm, as if testing her. She didn't pull away. She let her trembling fingers rest against his rough fur, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. She was not alone. Days bled into each other after that. She wandered the ruined streets near the construction site, never daring to go far, always with the pack close behind. They brought scraps from overturned trash bins, guided her toward abandoned shops, and kept her warm at night when the cold cut through her thin clothes. They treated her as one of their own. Without memory, without a name, she clung to them. The world outside was terrifying, sirens in the distance, flashing lights. The roar of cars, but with the dogs, she felt a strange safety. She became a ghost in the city, unseen, unwanted, yet still alive. Sometimes, when she closed her eyes, fragments slipped through the cracks in her broken mind. Fire, screams, the sound of metal twisting. A face she could almost see a man's face, but when she tried to hold on, it vanished like smoke. Every time she reached for the memory, pain split her skull until she cried out and pressed her hands to her ears. The dogs would whimper and huddle around her, guarding her from nightmares she couldn't even explain. She didn't know what haunted her more, the emptiness of forgetting or the terror of remembering. One night, as the city slept and rain poured down in silver sheets, she sat huddled beneath a bridge with the dogs curled around her. That was when she noticed a black car parked across the street. Its engine was off, its lights dimmed, but she felt the weight of its presence. Someone was inside, watching. She pulled her knees to her chest, every nerve screaming danger. The dogs noticed too. They rose, growling low, hackles raised. For long minutes, no one moved. Then, as if deciding the time was not yet right, the car started slowly and disappeared into the night. She didn't sleep at all until dawn broke. The days grew colder. She had no coat, no shelter, nothing but her ragged clothes and the warmth of her strange new family. Hunger clawed at her belly, and weakness made her stumble often. Sometimes she thought about walking into the city lights, finding people, asking for help. But fear always held her back. Something inside told her she couldn't be seen, that if the wrong eyes found her, the black car would return and she would vanish forever. She didn't know why, but her instincts screamed it was true. Her reflection in broken glass startled her the first time she saw it. A pale face, thin, dirt-streaked, with hollow eyes that looked older than her years. She studied her own features, desperately, as if they might whisper her name back to her. But nothing came. No identity, no past. Only the present, the girl with no memory, no family, no home. And yet, when the dogs pressed against her legs and looked up with trust shining in their eyes, she realized she was not truly alone. In their wild loyalty, she found something like belonging. Still, unease followed her like a shadow. The black car returned on other nights, sometimes parked farther away, sometimes closer, always silent, always waiting. She never saw the drivers. Face never knew if it was one person or many, but she felt someone was hunting her. She didn't know what they wanted or why she was important enough to watch, but she knew one truth in her heart. If they caught her, she would not survive. And so she stayed hidden in the ruins, clinging to the dogs for protection, each day a fragile fight to endure. Her life had been erased, her past stolen, but in the silence of those nights when the city forgot her, she whispered a promise to herself. She would find out who she was. She would uncover the truth, no matter how dangerous. Because deep inside her broken memory, she felt that she had once been someone who mattered, and someone out there had not finished with her yet. The night had fallen heavy over the city, wrapping its streets in a blanket of silence broken only by the faint hum of passing cars and the distant clatter of footsteps on uneven pavement. In one of the narrow alleys, where light rarely reached, and shadows ruled, the girl sat with her back pressed against the damp wall. Round her, 3 stray dogs lay curled close, their bodies shielding her from the cold as much as she shielded them from the world. Her fingers absent-mindedly stroked the rough fur of the closest one, her eyes staring blankly into the darkness ahead. She had no name she could remember, no past she could hold on to. Her mind was a vast, empty fog where fragments sometimes flickered, like broken glass. A bright light, the sound of metal screaming, and then nothing. That was all she had. The rest of her life now was the alley, the hunger, the whispers of strangers who passed by, calling her that lost girl or the broken one. She never answered them. She only knew trust when she looked into the loyal eyes of the strays. But that night was different. That night a sound broke the rhythm of her silent world. The slow, steady crunch of footsteps entered the alley, too calm to be drunk, too deliberate to be careless. The dogs stirred first, lifting their heads, ears sharp, low growls escaping their throats. The girl froze. Her heart kicked in her chest, her breath caught. Fear wasn't new to her. It was the only thing she truly understood. A man appeared. Out of the darkness. He wasn't like the others who passed by the alley. He didn't stare with pity or shake his head with disgust. He stopped a few feet away, his tall frame outlined by the faint light of the street behind him. His coat was old but neat, his face rough, yet calm. His eyes watching her not like she was broken, but like she mattered. The girl pressed back harder against the wall, her hands gripping the fur of the dogs as if they were the only anchor keeping her from being swept away. The dogs growled louder now, one of them stepping in front of her as if ready to fight. "It's all right," the man said quietly, his voice steady and low. "I'm not here to hurt you." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Words often slipped away from her like smoke, leaving only silence in their place. The man crouched down slowly, making himself smaller in her eyes. He pulled something from his coat pocket and set it on the ground, a sandwich, wrapped in paper, then another. He slid them gently across the ground, careful not to move closer. The smell of bread and meat drifted through the cold air. The dogs sniffed eagerly, tails twitching with temptation. The girl stared at the food, her stomach tightening with hunger, but she stayed still. She had learned the hard way that kindness could be a trap, a lure. Still, the man did not move. He only sat there in the alley, quiet, patient, as if he had all the time in the world. Finally, one of the braver dogs crept forward, snatching the sandwich and retreating quickly back to her side. It tore into the bread, the sound filling the silence. The girl's eyes followed, and her own hunger clawed at her insides. Slowly, she reached forward, trembling, and pulled the second sandwich closer. The man watched but did not speak. His gaze was steady, not forcing her, not asking anything in return. That was what made her take the first bite. The bread was soft, the meat salty, and the taste almost brought tears to her eyes. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten something so real. "See," the man said softly. "No tricks. Just food. You need it." Her eyes lifted to his face, and for the first time she let herself look at him properly. His expression wasn't pity, it was something else. Something warmer, something she couldn't name. The dogs relaxed slowly, their growls fading into quiet chewing and watchful eyes. The girl ate in silence, and the man stayed there in the shadows, not leaving, not pushing closer. It was strange. Strangers usually gave her one glance and walked away, but this man stayed. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, still unsure if she should thank him. But before she could think of anything, the man stood slowly. He looked down at her, his hands slipping back into his pockets. "I'll come back tomorrow," he said simply. "If you want me to." Then he turned, walking back into the night without waiting for an answer. The girl sat frozen long after he was gone, the echo of his words lingering in the air. No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever given her a choice. She pulled the dogs close, her chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. Fear, confusion, and something else. For the first time in a long time, the shadows of the alley felt different. It's not less dark, but less empty. The man was gone, but he had left something behind. A spark she didn't understand yet. Days turned into weeks, and the girl's world remained the same: quiet alleys, broken walls, the warm bodies of stray dogs pressed close against her at night. Her memory was still gone. Nothing came back. Not even a name she could call her own. But then came the day when everything shifted. The dogs had been restless that morning, their ears perked toward the end of the street, their bodies tense as though they sensed something unfamiliar approaching. She followed their gaze, her heart tightening without reason. And then she saw him, a man walking slowly through the ruined street, his eyes searching the shadows as though he was looking for something lost. He was not like the others who passed through. He did not kick at the dogs or curse them. Instead, he stopped when they barked and simply stood still. Waiting, the girl remained hidden, crouched behind a wall with the dogs pressing against her legs, but she could not pull her eyes away from him. He was tall, his shoulders strong, but his face carried something different, something she had not seen in anyone else. It was not fear, not pity, but a kind of quiet sadness, like he carried wounds inside him too. When his eyes turned toward her hiding place, she froze, her breath sharp in her chest. Somehow she felt he could see her even in the shadows. For a long moment, his gaze stayed there, steady and calm, and she felt her heart beat harder. That night she dreamed of the stranger's eyes. She could not remember her past, but she could remember the way his gaze had held her for those few seconds, as though he had been waiting to find her all along. She woke up shaking, with the dogs pressed against her for comfort, but instead of fear, there was something else, something dangerous and strange. Hope. The next morning, she saw him again. He returned, walking slower this time, his hands holding a bag. The dogs growled low, but he crouched down and pulled food from inside. Pieces of bread, scraps of meat, enough for them all. He placed the food gently on the ground and stepped back. The dogs hesitated, looking to her first. She gave them no command, but the bravest one, a brown dog with a torn ear, padded forward and ate. The man didn't move. Slowly the others joined, and soon the alley was filled with the sound of chewing. The girl, still hidden in the shadows, felt her throat tighten. No one had ever shared food with her pack. No one had ever treated them as anything but vermin. On the third day, when he returned, she made a choice. She stepped out of the shadows, her body trembling as though she faced a storm. The dogs instantly circled her, protective, ready to defend. The man didn't flinch. His eyes lifted to meet hers, and he simply said, in a voice low and steady, "I knew you were there." His words pierced through her like sunlight through clouds. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her voice, unused for so long, felt like a locked door. She swallowed hard, eyes darting between him and the food he had brought again. He set the bag down and stepped back, not pushing closer, not demanding anything from her. He waited. That patience unsettled her more than anger ever could. Slowly, she crouched and pulled the bread from the bag, breaking pieces for the dogs first, then keeping one small piece for herself. She chewed, her throat burning, as though her body was not used to kindness. He only watched, his face unreadable, but his eyes still soft, still carrying that unshakable sadness. That night, she lay awake long after the dogs slept. She could still see his face in her mind. The world she knew was dark, cruel, and cold, but this man was something else, something that didn't fit. She had no memory of who she was, but for the first time since the crash, she felt the weight of not knowing her past more heavily. Who was she really? Why did his eyes feel like they recognized her, even when she did not recognize herself? By the fourth day, she was waiting for him. The days grew heavy with waiting. Each morning, the girl found herself rising earlier, brushing dirt from her skin, combing her tangled hair with her fingers, and staring down the broken street where the stranger always appeared. The dogs sensed her change. They paced restlessly, whining at her silence, tilting their heads as if asking why she suddenly cared about the footsteps of a man. She tried to ignore them, but her chest ached in ways she did not understand. When he returned again, carrying that same worn bag of food, she did not hide this time. She stood there in the open, the pack flanking her sides like loyal guards, their eyes fixed on him. For a moment he paused. His gaze traveled over her thin frame, her sharp cheekbones, her wild hair, and then rested on her eyes. He did not smile, but there was something like relief in the way his shoulders eased. Slowly, he placed the food down and stepped back, the same ritual as always. But this time, she did not rush the dogs to eat. She stepped forward first. The man's eyes flickered with surprise, but he did not move. The silence between them stretched like a rope pulled tight, and finally her voice broke through it. The words were rough, strained, as though her throat had forgotten how to form them. "Why?" she whispered. The man blinked. For a second, he seemed unsure if he had truly heard her. Then he spoke, steady but low, as though afraid his voice might shatter her fragile courage. "Because you needed it." Her chest tightened. The words struck deeper than she wanted to admit. She opened her mouth to speak again, but her voice cracked, and only a broken sound escaped. She turned sharply, crouching down to tear the bread and feed the dogs, hiding the tears that stung her eyes. That night she could not sleep. His answer echoed in her head, simple, quiet, but heavy with a truth she could not carry. No one had ever cared why she needed anything. No one had asked if she needed help. The world had been only survival, one cruel day after another. Yet this man looked at her as though she was not just another shadow in the ruins, not just another forgotten child. She was someone. The next morning she tried to stay away. Fear gnawed at her. What if he expected more? What if he wanted something? In return, she did not know how to give, only how to protect what little she had. She sat curled up against a broken wall, arms around her knees, fighting the urge to look for him. But when the dogs suddenly barked, ears turning toward the street, her heart betrayed her. She looked. There he was again, walking with the same slow steps, carrying the same bag. She hated the relief that washed over her. The pack rushed forward this time, tails wagging, no longer growling. It accepted him as one of their own. She rose and followed, her bare feet silent on the cracked ground. "Who are you?" asked, her voice still weak but stronger than before. He crouched down to place the food, his movements careful. "My name doesn't matter," he said softly. "Not yet." His answer unsettled her. It was as if he knew more than he let on. She narrowed her eyes, but the dogs were already eating, their trust overpowering her doubts. She tore a piece of bread for herself and chewed slowly, never taking her eyes off him. For the first time the man smiled, just a faint curve of his lips. But it was enough to stir something inside her chest that felt dangerously like warmth. That night, as the city slept in silence and the stars burned cold above, she whispered into the dark, testing the words on her own tongue. "Because you needed it." And for the first time since she woke with no memory, she wondered if her life had been waiting for this moment. For him, all along. The next morning brought a sky the color of ash, heavy and unmoving, as though the world itself was holding its breath. The girl sat on the cold steps of a broken building, her arms wrapped tight around her knees. She told herself she would not wait. She told herself she did not care if he came back. Yet every small sound, every shifting pebble, every bird that dared cry out pulled her eyes toward the street where he always appeared, and when at last he came. Her chest ached with a strange mix of relief and anger. He walked as always, steady and sure, but this time his hands carried more than food. In his left hand was a small folded bundle wrapped in cloth. She stood quickly, her dogs crowding around her legs, their tails wagging as if they already knew. The man brought more than bread. He placed the bag of food on the ground, but he did not step back right away. Instead, he held out the bundle in silence. The girl froze, her breath caught in her throat. The dogs whined impatiently, circling, but she could not move. Something about the way he held it careful, almost reverent, told her it was not just another gift. What is that? She asked, her voice sharp. His eyes met hers, steady and searching. It's yours. She shook her head immediately, fear rising hot and fast. No, I don't want it. But the man did not lower his hand. You do? You just don't remember yet. The words struck her harder than any blow. She stumbled back, her heels scraping the stone, her pack pressing close to her sides as if to shield her. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest. He knew. He knew she could not remember who she was. How do you know that? She whispered, her voice trembling. For a long moment, he said nothing. His silence was heavier than words. At last, he placed the bundle gently on a stone and stepped back, his eyes never leaving hers. Because I was sent to find you. Her world tilted.
Oh.
The ground seemed to shift beneath her bare feet. She shook her head violently, clutching at her hair, her voice rising. No, no one would send anyone for me. I am nothing. No one remembers me. The dogs barked, startled by her sudden outburst. But the man's expression did not change. Calm, steady, unshaken, he watched her with eyes that seemed older than the ruins around them. You were forgotten, he said softly, but not by everyone. Her breathing came fast and shallow. She stared at the bundle on the stone, afraid to touch it, afraid to know.
Out.
Yet something inside her screamed to reach out, to pull back the cloth and see what waited within. Finally, her trembling hand extended. Her fingers brushed the rough fabric, and she snatched it back as if burned. The man did not move, did not speak. The silence pressed down on her until she could not bear it any more. With a sharp cry, she grabbed the bundle and tore the cloth. Away inside was a locket, small, silver, tarnished with age, but still holding a faint glimmer as if the metal itself refused to die. Her fingers shook as she held it, as though it carried the weight of 1,000 memories she could not see. She fumbled with the clasp until it opened, and inside was a picture faded but clear enough. A young girl with wide eyes and tangled hair stared back at her, herself. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed to the ground. The dogs pressed around her, whining, nudging her with their wet noses, but she could not feel them. She could feel only the cold metal of the locket in her hands, the hollow space in her chest, screaming to be filled with answers. Her eyes snapped up, burning with sudden fury. Who are you? Tell me the truth. For the first time, the man looked, uncertain. His jaw tightened, and he glanced away as if the weight of her demand pressed too hard against him. When he finally spoke, his words were low, careful. My name is not important. What matters is yours. He paused, his eyes locking back onto hers. Your name is Alara. The sound of it sent a shiver down her spine. The words seemed to echo through her body, pulling at something buried deep within her mind. For a brief, fleeting second, an image flashed, hands reaching for her, voices calling her name, a warm light before everything turned dark. Then it was gone, leaving only emptiness and fear. Alara, she whispered, tasting the word, feeling how it fit against her tongue like something both foreign and familiar. Her chest ached, her heart raced. Tears blurred her vision. Can't I remember? The man's eyes softened, but his voice carried a shadow. Because someone made you forget, and they'll come for you when they realize you are alive. The words struck like thunder. She clutched the locket to her chest, her body trembling. The dogs growled low, their instincts picking up on her fear, on the weight of the danger pressing closer. She wanted to scream at him, demand every answer. But all she could do was whisper her name again, broken and shaking. Elara. And for the first time, the forgotten girl felt the world shift around her. She was no longer just a shadow in the ruins. She was someone hunted, someone remembered, someone whose past was not as lost as she had believed. The locket burned cold in her palm, and the man's warning echoed in her head. They'll come for you. And deep inside, beneath the fear, a spark of something else stirred something sharp, something dangerous. If they came, she would be ready. The girl had changed. The stray dogs that once huddled beside her in the cold, forgotten corners of the city now followed her with eyes full of trust. They sensed the change in her heart, the warmth that had entered her life since he arrived. For months, the man had been her anchor, gave her food, clothes, and most importantly, a reason to believe she wasn't just a shadow in the world. Yet as her days became brighter, her nights were filled with dreams that unsettled her. She saw flashes of faces she didn't know, voices calling her name in the darkness. The past, though forgotten, seemed to claw its way back, and she was caught between the life she had built with him and the memories trying to return. One evening, as the city lights flickered against the cold streets, he sat with her under the broken roof where she once slept with the dogs. His voice was gentle, but his words heavy. I don't want to lose you, he admitted. Even if your past returns, even if you remember everything, I hope you'll choose to stay. His hand brushed against hers, warm and steady, as if anchoring her to the present. Her heart ached, torn between gratitude for the love he offered, and the haunting feeling that her story was unfinished. Days later, the choice came crashing into her world. A stranger appeared at the edge of the street where she often fed the dogs. He called her by a name she didn't recognize but felt in her bones. We've been searching for you, he said, his voice urgent, his eyes wide with relief. Your family thought you were dead. The man at her side stiffened. For the first time since he found her, fear flickered across his face, not fear of losing her to strangers, but of her choosing a world that didn't include him. The girl's chest tightened. She had wanted her past, begged for it in the silence of sleepless nights. But now that it was here, standing before her in the form of this stranger, she hesitated. The dog circled her legs protectively, sensing her fear. Behind her, the man who saved her life stood silent, his love an unspoken plea. In front of her, the stranger's words promised answers, family, and a chance to be whole again. She realized then that no memory, no name, could erase the life she had lived since the crash. She had built something here, with him, with the dogs. In the ruins of her forgotten past, her choice was not easy, but it was clear. She stepped back from the stranger and turned toward the man who had never let her feel abandoned. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, I may not remember who I was, but I know who I am now, and I want to stay. The stranger's face fell, but he nodded, understanding that some wounds healed not by going back, but by moving forward. Slowly, he walked away, leaving her standing in the cold street with the only family she had chosen, the man and the dogs. The city around them still looked broken, the nights still long and heavy, but for the first time since the crash, she felt whole. Love had saved her not by erasing the pain, not by giving her back the past, but by showing her that even in the shadows she could find light. And as the dogs curled around them, and he wrapped his arm over her shoulders, she finally smiled. Not with fear or confusion, but with hope. Her story wasn't about what she had lost. It was about what she had found.